I think the election results, although wasn't our first plan, without doubt, it's provided a very unique opportunity in time for New Brunswick to be better, and we will be better.
After 5 weeks of political wrangling, New Brunswick's Liberal government has fallen, setting the stage for a progressive Conservative government to take power. Brian Gallant's Liberals lost a vote of confidence in the Legislature this morning. They had held a loose grip on power ever since the September election left the province politically fractured. So, what does the outgoing Premier make of this result, and what's next for him? Joining me now in Fredericton is outgoing New Brunswick Premier Brian Gallant. Hi, Mr. Gallant. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for making time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Gallant, do you have any regrets about holding on to power until now?
Well, we knew it would be an uphill battle. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Conservatives as well because of the really tight margins. With that said, we thought that we had a path to be able to gain the confidence of the House. We were very pleased that the 3 members from the Green Party decided to support our collaborative and progressive agenda. Unfortunately, we needed the third person to sort of flip instead of voting against and have them vote for our speech from the throne. But with that said, we understand that moving forward, New Brunswickers want politics to change. If they wanted a government to make unilateral decisions, they would have provided a majority government. They did not. They said the minority government situation that we're in has to work. So we're going to do everything we can as a Liberal caucus to make sure that we work collaboratively for the betterment of the people of New Brunswick moving forward.
I just want to be clear, though, when you say that you thought there was a path forward, you knew you had the support of the Greens. Did anyone outside of the Greens ever say that they would be supporting your throne speech?
Well, at first we were hopeful that we'd be able to get a confidence and supply agreement with the Green Party and as well get an opposition member to be Speaker. That would have given us the numbers we believe to be able to gain confidence of the House. Unfortunately, we didn't get a deal with the Green Party, but they did end up announcing yesterday that they would support the speech from the throne, which they did this morning. We also were still in talks for the last few days with others to see if there would be somebody that would be willing to take action to be able to help us gain the confidence of the House. There were people that were discussing pretty much right until the last minute, and they decided to vote the way they did, and we respect that. We certainly felt an obligation
Who were those people,
Mr.
Mr.
to try to provide a progressive government. Well, I certainly think in this new climate we're going to have some pretty good dialogue amongst the parties, so I'm certainly not going to out anyone. But what I can tell you is that moving forward, we're going to do everything we can to improve the way that we do politics. I think the election result is a message to me. I think it's a message that they want us to work a lot better with other political parties and consider more perspectives than we did over the last 4 years. I'm very proud of the government that we led, but I recognize it wasn't a perfect government. We made some mistakes, and one of those mistakes was clearly not working enough with the other parties and listening to the other perspectives. So we certainly got the rude awakening, and moving forward, I know the Liberal caucus will be committed to showing New Brunswickers that we heard their message.
Does that mean that you're willing to work collaboratively with Mr. Higgs and use your party to prop up his government?
Well, we're willing to work collaboratively with all the political parties, including Mr. Higgs and his party. I said that today. There's a little bit of bad blood if you do a little bit of the history between our two parties over probably decades, if not almost a century. And there is a little bit of that bad blood between myself and Mr. Higgs. But today I made a very stern commitment, knowing that I would end up in opposition, that we do want to work collaboratively with all the other political parties, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because New Brunswickers sent a very strong message. For the first time in 100 years, New Brunswickers did not give either the Liberals or the Conservatives a majority government. So these are unprecedented times here in New Brunswick, and I think that we as politicians have to act in an unprecedented way, and I made a commitment to do that, whether I would be Premier or that I be in the Leader of the Opposition seat. No matter what, we're going to heed the call that New Brunswickers gave us on election night.
You also, in your speech in the Legislature and speaking to reporters after, talked about the sort of level of divisiveness in the party, how it was, the lines were drawn between the North and the South, between Anglophone and Francophone. How much did you specifically contribute to that level of divisiveness?
Mm-hmm. Well, as Premier, I take full responsibility for the election results, and I take full responsibility for the fact that when you look at the electoral map, you could easily conclude that there is a divide between North and South, between Anglophones and Francophones in the province. Now, I want to be clear, there are thousands of Anglophones that voted for our party, and there's thousands of Francophones that voted for the Conservatives, and both Anglophones and Francophones voted for other parties as well. But nonetheless, the results certainly point to the possibility of division happening in this province, and I take full responsibility. I think what I could have done better is, while there were discussions happening about the fact that we are the only officially bilingual province in the country, there was a lot of discussions about how people felt that created challenges for them. And sometimes it could be creating practical challenges, but as Premier, I should have done a lot more to weigh in that conversation, bust some of the myths, and talk a lot more about the benefits, the $1.8 billion that is injected by the business services center industry that we have in this province because we are officially bilingual and have a bilingual workforce, as an example, and also the benefits to our social fabric. So I could have done a lot more over the last few years to try to refute some of the myths and, of course, promote and talk about the benefits of being officially bilingual as a province. So that's one of the regrets that I have, and I admitted that today in the speech, and moving forward, in no matter which capacity I have, I'll do the best I can to right that wrong that I should have done over the last 4 years.
Speaking of whichever capacity you pursue, why didn't you resign as party leader today?
Well, as you may have seen, the Liberal caucus has asked me to not only go with the speech from the throne right till the end to the vote like we did today, but they've asked me to stay on, and they've asked me to fight another election. We are very pleased with what we put forward as a party during the campaign, and that resulted in winning the popular vote by 6 points. We did receive 38% of the votes. We received 21 seats to the Conservatives' 22 seats. Certainly wasn't the majority government that we were hoping for, but nonetheless, a solid amount of support that we can build on, learning from our mistakes. So either way, I want to play a role moving forward in our province, and I certainly want to play a role to help the Liberal Party ensure that we can represent all the regions of the province better than we seem to have done in the eyes of New Brunswickers over the last 4 years. It's just a question of which role I would wish to do that in. My wife and I have sort of decided that we would chat over the coming days on exactly what we would like to do to contribute to the province, and what capacity, I should say, moving forward. We, over the last few weeks, have really just been thinking about what we can do that is best for the province. I think I owe it to my wife that we take some time to think about what's best for our family and for the Liberal Party moving forward as well.
With respect, though, are you just hedging your bets until you see what happens with Mr. Higgs and whether he can stay on as Premier?
Not at all. If you would have had the chance to follow me over the last few weeks, you would probably see me getting more tired as the days and weeks go by. I mean, it's been pretty grueling. We had the campaign, and then we got right into this situation where we've been working very hard to try to gain the confidence of the House and develop a progressive and collaborative speech from the throne, laying out an agenda that we thought would be supported by the other political parties. And that took a lot of work to be able to not only work with the full caucus, but also with listening to the other parties and perspectives. And then we just got into the ledge, and we just finished the vote for the speech from the throne. So there really hasn't been a minute for us as a couple to sit down and talk about what we want our future to hold. So we'll do that over the coming days. I look forward to getting a full night's sleep, and I look forward to going on a simple date with my wife this weekend. I certainly have been missing that over the last 2 months, and try to get my headspace at a better spot so I can make this very important decision, obviously for my family, the party, and even more importantly for the province, because I really do think the Liberal Party is the best party positioned to be able to unite our province again moving forward.
I just want to be clear, though, because do you have a specific timeline in which, I know you're saying in the days you'll think about it, but do you have a specific timeline in which you'll make this decision? And I ask out of all seriousness because there is going to be a timeline now for Mr. Higgs as well. And if you're waiting to see whether he fails in that role and he's not able to hold on to Premier before you make that decision, I mean, that's a political calculation.
Yeah, but I can just tell you that honestly tonight that's not what's going on here. It's not whatsoever any type of political consideration. It's the only consideration is that I'm a little sleep deprived, a little emotional today as we had so much going on. and both my wife and I thought it was best that we maybe take a little bit of time to reflect on exactly what we would like to be doing to move the province forward. But with that said, Vashi, I can tell you that I want to play some type of role. There's no doubt about that. So it's really just a question of if we decide that I should try to stay on to do what I can as Leader of the Opposition and perhaps fight another election, as you said, that could come sooner than later. And obviously there's considerations with the caucus that have asked me to run again, with the fact that there could be an election in short order. Those are all very important considerations that could have an impact on the party and ultimately the province. So all of that's weighing heavy on us as well.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Gallant. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Vashi.
So what does this political change mean for New Brunswick and its relationship with Ottawa? The CBC's Jacques Poitras joins us now from Fredericton. Hey, Jacques, thanks for being with us. Let me just first ask you about we just heard Mr. Gallant say. Help us read between the lines here. From where you sit, is there a bit of hedging of bets happening in the decision about whether or not to stay on as leader or in some other capacity?
Well, he can't really hedge too long because the Liberal Party rules in New Brunswick require the board of directors of the party to make a decision on whether to hold a leadership review after an election the party loses, which I guess we can now say they have, within 3 months. So there's a decision coming by the party whether Brian Gallant likes it or not. And we hear him talking about the caucus letter, which he wants the party to consider. You asked about the timeline before the next election. Could be very short. There might not be time for a leadership race. So that's in the mix as well. And even when we heard Gallant in his speech today and a bit in your interview, talking about how he wished he had talked more about official bilingualism. That's a basic Liberal Party value, and we could see there perhaps a message to the party's base, to the party's longtime supporters, appealing to them and their sense of liberalism in the hopes of staying on as leader. But he has been visibly tired the last few days, so let's take him for his word that maybe he just does want to relax for a while before making that decision.
And let's talk about Mr. Higgs. What can we expect from him as Premier?
Well, it's going to be a very fast start. I mean, Blaine Higgs has said that his government would join the Saskatchewan appeal of the federal carbon tax plan, and that the province would have to file its application to intervene in that case in Saskatchewan by the end of the month. So we'll see some fast action there. The interesting thing about Blaine Higgs, he's a former business executive. He's 64. He's made a virtue of his life experience, his business experience, contrasting it to that of Brian Gallant, who became Premier at a young age, and has said that he is ready on day one to make the tough decisions that New Brunswick needs. However, he is now in this situation where he will be running a minority government, so he's also going to be constrained in what he's going to do, and he has acknowledged in the last couple of days, as it's become more clear that he would become the Premier, that he's not going to be able to do everything he wanted to do. And rather than that sort of decisive, quick action, he is also going to have to adopt this talk and perhaps action of working collaboratively with other parties to figure out what he can pass and what he can do while maintaining confidence of the legislature. Speaking
of working together or not, what's going to happen with the relationship with Ottawa? How do you see that playing out?
Well, I mean, we can look at this as part of this mini blue wave that we've been seeing with governments across the country, Liberal governments going down and flipping to Conservative governments, and so it is part of that trend. But of course, Blaine Higgs, as I said, has not won a majority, so he doesn't really have the decisive mandate that, say, Doug Ford has in Ontario or François Legault in Quebec. So he's going to have to tread more carefully. He's already got this language issue that he has to deal with. Without getting into too much details, there's a court order on a requirement for bilingual paramedics and ambulance crews. It's created a lot of controversy in the province, a lot of practical problems with filling paramedic vacancies. And Blaine Higgs has promised to fix that. But some of the fixes he's talked about could go against a court order by a judge. So he has to figure out how to navigate that, and that's coming at him very soon. He said he would get to work on that issue his first day in office. So there are a lot of minefields out there.
Okay, thanks so much, Jacques. The CBC's Jacques Poitras in Fredericton.